LA Knight just got the US title back, Naomi just turned heel, Rhea Ripley just lost the Women's World title, and of course John Cena turned heel. All of this goes to show that WWE is being very unpredictable this road to WrestleMania. So much is happening so fast that it's basically pointless to even predict the WrestleMania match card at this point. But let's do it anyway. I wanted to wait until after Elimination Chamber to make this video, and I am so glad that I did. Because after that show and the following episodes of Raw and SmackDown, the road to WrestleMania is starting to look clear. So with that being said, I thought it'd be fun to predict the entire match card for WrestleMania across both nights. What I think the matches are gonna be and who I think's gonna win. So let's get started. I'm Brandon and this is Wrestling Talk. Okay, so when putting this card together, there are a couple things to keep in mind. And that is the number of matches that we're gonna get across both nights. WWE seems to always go with a maximum of 7 matches per night. And if there does happen to be an 8th match, it's usually like 5 minutes long, if that. So realistically, we're only looking at like 14 matches, but I'm gonna predict a few more just because there are so many wrestlers on the roster right now. It is stacked. And WWE is honestly at a point where if they don't have more than 14 matches at WrestleMania, you're gonna have some serious main event talent being left off the card. So because of that, we're gonna predict a few more. Let's start off with the matches that are already confirmed and locked in. Jey Uso versus Gunther is probably gonna be the night 1 main event. It's very simple. You can't call him main event Jey Uso without putting him in the WrestleMania main event, especially after he won the Royal Rumble. So because of that, I actually think this is a lock to main event night 1. I don't love it. There are a lot of other matches I'd rather see in that spot, but given the fact that Jey Uso is such a huge star, it just makes all of the business sense for this to be the night 1 main event. As far as who wins, it has to be Jey. Like, has to. Gunther's title reign has been mid. Weak sauce, as the kids say. It all started going downhill when he lost to Cody Rhodes at Crown Jewel. I still contend that Gunther should have won that match. Cody Rhodes losing due to Kevin Owens' interference would have totally protected him. It would have made him feel less indestructible, less protected as the company's top guy, and it would have solidified Gunther as a top guy and the World Heavyweight title as a main event title. But ever since Gunther lost that match, the World Heavyweight title just feels like a mid-card title. And the feud with Damian and Finn made him look weak. So at this point, Gunther doesn't feel like a main event star. Jey Uso does feel like a main event star, but we just saw this match at Saturday night's main event. So why would this main event over the Women's World title triple threat? Or Punk versus Roman and Seth? Both of those are matchups we've never seen before, have way more compelling stories, and will probably end up being better in the ring. Will it be cool to see Jey win the title and end night 1 of WrestleMania yeeting with the crowd? Sure, but still. Moving on. Next up, Charlotte Flair versus Tiffany Stratton. This is probably going to end up being a co-main event of either night of WrestleMania, so either right before Jey versus Gunther or right before Cody versus Cena. My guess is it's going to be right before Jey versus Gunther because, and I know a lot of you aren't going to like this, Charlotte's going to win. And because of that, I think WWE is going to want to offset that with a more crowd-pleasing moment, like Jey winning. But anyway, here's why. Charlotte Flair just came back, and really she's only won the Royal Rumble. She hasn't done much else. Obviously, WWE sees a lot in Tiffany Stratton and they want to make her a big star. But if Tiffany just beat Charlotte at WrestleMania after Charlotte really only had the Royal Rumble and a few matches on SmackDown, that doesn't really do much for her. However, if she loses to Charlotte at WrestleMania and then eventually beats her at the culmination of a 6-month feud, that's gonna do something for her. I always think back to Becky versus Bianca, one of my favorite feuds of the last few years. Bianca lost the title at SummerSlam and didn't get it back until the following WrestleMania. And when she did, it was a huge moment that really propelled her into another level of stardom. I think that's what WWE is trying to do with this Charlotte-Tiffany feud. I think Charlotte gets the win at WrestleMania, everyone's up in arms, and then Tiffany has to work her way up to challenge for it again. And in the meantime, we can get a lot of fresh matchups. Charlotte versus Nia, Naomi, Jade Cargill. I'm not saying those are all first-time ever matchups, but at this point in time, they feel fresh. From an in-ring standpoint, this match is gonna cook. But let's be honest, the build for it hasn't been all that interesting. Either way though, I think Charlotte will and should win. Next up, Cody Rhodes versus John Cena. John Cena has to win this for two reasons. One, Cody Rhodes has had the belt for a year, and there were a lot of chunks in that year where his title run wasn't all that compelling. It was great when he faced AJ Styles, and the story with Kevin Owens was awesome. But if Cody beats John Cena at WrestleMania, he's basically done with that story. There's no reason to run that match back. And then Cody is just going to go back to defending the title against whoever's on SmackDown. Compared to John Cena holding the title, Cody retaining just makes everything way less exciting. Reason number two, there are reports that have come out saying that John Cena's heel turn was originally scheduled to happen at WrestleMania itself. Now, assuming those reports are true, to me, that means that Cena was always planned to win at WrestleMania. My mind goes right back to WrestleMania 17, when Stone Cold turned heel and joined with Vince McMahon to beat The Rock and then win the title. If Cena's heel turn was originally slated to happen at WrestleMania, it was probably going to be a very similar setup, where Cena teams with The Rock to beat Cody and win the title, leaving WrestleMania as champion. You don't turn John Cena of all people heel just to have him lose. To me, Cena winning the title is the right call. It's the more exciting call. Like Cena says, it's better for business. So yes, he's gonna win his record-breaking title as a bad guy, but it will kick off such an exciting title reign. Cena versus Punk, Cena versus Randy, Cena versus AJ Styles, Cena versus Roman, Cena versus Rey Mysterio. Obviously, Cena versus Cody round 2. And then eventually down the line, Cena's gonna turn on The Rock. I don't think we're gonna get that match again, but he'll probably give another AA to The Rock, and that'll be that. So yeah, Cena wins. Match number 4, Io Sky versus Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley. This is definitely gonna be a triple threat. There is no way Rhea Ripley is not fighting for this title at WrestleMania. Would I have preferred it to just be Rhea versus Bianca? Yeah. Am I upset that Io Sky's involved? Absolutely not. Like Charlotte versus Tiffany, this could be the best match of the entire weekend. I would love this match to main event, but I don't think that's gonna happen. But who's gonna win? It's gotta be Bianca Belair. Why? She has the undefeated WrestleMania streak, and I do not see any reason for WWE to end that streak. Think about it. She can be the new Undertaker, where every year at WrestleMania, the Bianca Belair match is an attraction onto itself. Who's finally gonna end her WrestleMania streak? There are no other top wrestlers in WWE right now that have that streak. Cody Rhodes, Rhea Ripley, CM Punk, Randy Orton, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, they've all lost at WrestleMania at least once. Bianca Belair is an anomaly because so far she hasn't. So as far as I'm concerned, Bianca shouldn't lose at WrestleMania for the next 5 years. Keep the streak going till it at least gets to 9-0, because there is huge story potential there, and it doesn't make sense for WWE to completely kill that potential right now, especially in a triple threat. If Bianca is going to lose her WrestleMania undefeated streak, it needs to be in a one-on-one match. Plus, unlike Io and Rhea, Bianca hasn't held a singles title since like SummerSlam 2023. So out of the 3 women in this match, Bianca winning is actually the freshest option. All right, those are the 4 world titles, the main event matches. But now let's get into all of the other ones. Starting off with Punk versus Roman versus Seth. This triple threat is probably going to happen. No title will be on the line. As much as I want this match to main event, I actually don't think it should, because there's nothing on the line. And when CM Punk finally gets his WrestleMania main event, it needs to be for a title. As far as who wins, it's definitely not going to be Roman. I actually think it's going to be Seth. Why? Because Punk has been destroying Seth this entire feud. He beat him on the Raw Netflix debut, eliminated him from the Rumble, eliminated him from the Chamber. So if Punk wins at WrestleMania, big deal. But if Seth wins at WrestleMania, that's more interesting. And it also keeps the story going where Roman has never beaten Seth on a big stage. Even when they faced each other at the Royal Rumble a few years ago, Roman technically lost the match due to DQ, but because it was a DQ, the title didn't change hands. So I actually think Seth winning is just the more interesting choice, and I actually think Seth pinning Roman is probably the best decision. But again, it doesn't really matter who wins because it's not for anything. Next up, Randy Orton versus Kevin Owens. This is very simple. Both guys need a spot on the card, and Randy needs a big win. That's all there is to it. Kevin Owens beat Sami at the Chamber, so he looked stronger going into this Mania match with Randy. I fully expect the story of this match to just be Randy trying to punt kick Kevin Owens. And you know what? That's all I need. Randy for the win, obviously. Next up, Jade Cargill versus Naomi. This one I'm excited for. Why? Because obviously Jade Cargill is going to win. This is going to be her WrestleMania singles match debut. So defeating Naomi is needed, and it's going to elevate her to that next level. But that's not to say that this match isn't going to help Naomi, because you can still lose a match and get over in the process. The whole point of this feud is to get Jade over as a babyface and to get Naomi over as a heel. And after their WrestleMania match, I fully expect both of them to be on different brands, and then each of them can start going after world titles. All right, let's just keep going with all the grudge matches. Next up, Jacob Fatu versus Solo Sikoa. Similar to Jade versus Naomi and similar to Randy versus Kevin Owens, this match is entirely designed to get Jacob Fatu a win. WWE clearly sees a future for him, so him beating Solo is basically a lock. I'll be honest with you though, this match doesn't scream WrestleMania to me. It feels more like a main event of SmackDown. Also, both guys are kind of heels. Obviously, the crowd loves Jacob Fatu because of his charisma and athleticism, so they're probably going to be cheering for him and booing Solo. But that begs the question, is WWE going to make Jacob Fatu a babyface? I don't know. Jacob for the win though. Moving on to another grudge match, Sami Zayn versus Karrion Kross. To me, this does not scream WrestleMania match at all. But Sami Zayn is a big star. He needs to be on the card in some way. And now that the KO story's done, Karrion Kross is the only person that Sami's been interacting or feuding with on Raw that isn't already swallowed up in another story. So by process of elimination, this is the Mania match. As far as who's gonna win, it's Sami, obviously. Next up, we got the match that no one's really hyped for at all, but it appears that this is what we're getting. Drew McIntyre versus Damian Priest. Now, if this is the match for WrestleMania, which if you're following a lot of the reports, it seems to be, Drew is obviously gonna win. WWE clearly sees him as a major player in 2025, so him winning here is pivotal to that. But there have also been reports that WWE is starting to reevaluate this matchup, mainly because a lot of people online, like me, have been levying a lot of criticism at it for just feeling like a nothing match. So, if you'll allow me to cook, instead of Drew versus Damian, why not Drew versus Damian versus LA Knight versus Jimmy Uso for the US title? Is it random? Yes. Is it more entertaining than Damian versus Drew again? I think so. This is also my way to consolidate the match card a bit, because I'm looking at the matches I laid out right now, and I actually have 17. So if I really want to stick to that 16 match lineup, I would just have the US title match be LA Knight versus Jimmy Uso versus Damian and Drew, and you just take all four guys and you put them in the ring. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I think you're looking at Drew versus Damian. And again, Drew wins, absolutely. I just wish WWE had something better for these guys. Speaking of the US title though, LA Knight is definitely going to be at WrestleMania. He's a big star. That's why they put the title back on him, because Shinsuke isn't really a big star anymore. So obviously you need LA Knight walking into Mania as champ. And on SmackDown, there's not a whole lot of options for him to face. Randy and KO have a match. Drew and Damian have a match. Jacob and Solo have a match. So really the only players for LA Knight are Braun Strowman, Carmelo Hayes, Andrade, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Jimmy Uso. Now, would I love to just put all 6 guys in the ring and have them duke it out? Sure, but I've also predicted a few other multi-men matches already, and I don't think WWE is going to want to do 4 of them at WrestleMania. So because of that, I think the US title match at WrestleMania is going to be LA Knight versus Jimmy Uso. Why? Because when you look at Carmelo Hayes, Andrade, and Shinsuke, it's kind of a been there, done that situation. There is potential that they throw Braun in there, but again, I'm already predicting a few other triple threats for this year's Mania, and I don't think WWE's gonna want to do 5 of them. So yeah, as random as this feels, I think you're looking at LA Knight versus Jimmy Uso. Both guys are super over with the crowd. It just makes sense. As far as who wins, probably LA Knight. All right, moving on to my last non-title match. Chad Gable and the New Day versus Rey Mysterio, Penta and Rey Fenix. Why am I predicting this match? Because Rey Mysterio and Penta need to be on the WrestleMania card in some fashion. And because of the current storylines, I don't think we're just going to get a one-on-one Rey versus Penta, because currently the LWO is feuding with the New Day, and after losing to Penta, Chad Gable has gone on this odyssey trying to find out how to beat luchadors. So to me, this is the way the story's going. So I think Chad Gable's going to return with a mask of his own, team up with the New Day, probably give each of them a mask, and then Rey Mysterio is going to recruit Penta to help fight these guys. They're still going to be outnumbered, and who does Penta call but his brother, Rey Fenix? The rumor is that Rey Fenix is going to be released from his AEW contract, so if that happens, I think him wrestling with Penta and Rey at WrestleMania seems like the way to go. If he's not released in time, just put Dragon Lee in that spot. So this is where I think the story's going. An easy breezy 6-man tag where obviously the luchadors are gonna win. As a match, it doesn't feel all that compelling, but when you have stars like Rey Mysterio, Penta, and even the New Day who all need to be showcased at WrestleMania, sometimes you just have to throw a match together. That's what I think this is. Alright, I have 5 matches left, and they're all title matches. We already talked about the men's US title, so let's talk about the women's US title. I think Chelsea Green deserves a spot at WrestleMania. Honest to God, she's having one of the most entertaining title reigns at the moment, and she's increasingly getting more popular, so I don't think it's a wise decision to keep her off of WrestleMania. Plus, you just introduced the women's US title and the women's IC title, so if you want these titles to feel important, they gotta be defended at Mania. So that begs the question, who does Chelsea Green face at WrestleMania? My pick? Trish Stratus. This year is actually Trish's 25th anniversary with WWE, so I think they're going to want to make that a big deal. She entered the Royal Rumble, then she wrestled at Elimination Chamber, so if we're going to keep this 25th anniversary tour going, she needs a spot at WrestleMania. And what better opponent is there than Chelsea Green? When I think of the biggest possible match you can do for the women's US title, it's Chelsea versus Trish. 2 Canadians duking it out over the US title. As far as who wins, obviously it should be Chelsea Green. When I look at the roster, I don't see a more exciting matchup for Chelsea than Trish. Maybe Nikki Bella, I'd be down to see that. Moving on to the women's IC title. Lyra Valkyria is the current champion, and on Raw, there aren't any obvious contenders for her. She's already faced Dakota Kai and Ivy Nile. Initially, I was thinking Liv or Raquel, more on them in a bit. So I've come down to 2 options. One makes the most sense right now, and one makes the most sense if it's possible. So the more realistic option is a triple threat. Lyra Valkyria versus Bayley versus Roxanne Perez. Bayley is a huge star who is really in danger of missing out on WrestleMania this year, which is crazy because last year she damn near main evented, and this year I can't think of a place for her other than the fact that she's been feuding with Roxanne Perez. And she did pin Lyra Valkyria clean, qualifying for the Elimination Chamber. So WWE can take both of those stories, merge them into one match, and then you can just get yet another triple threat at WrestleMania. At the moment, it seems like the most logical option, but I think WWE is actually going to do Bayley versus Roxanne at Stand and Deliver, which may be unfortunate because that means Bayley would be left off of WrestleMania. But if they do that and it's Bayley versus Roxanne at Stand and Deliver, then Lyra would need another opponent, which brings me to option 2, Becky Lynch. Initially, she was supposed to return on the Raw Netflix debut. That didn't happen. She didn't show up at the Royal Rumble. She didn't show up before the Elimination Chamber. So at this point, it seems likely that they're just saving Becky Lynch for the Raw after WrestleMania. But Triple H did say at the Elimination Chamber press conference that there are still a lot of twists and turns that need to happen leading up to WrestleMania in the next 5 or 6 weeks. I think one of those surprises is Becky Lynch returning. From a pure business standpoint, Becky Lynch is a bigger star than Lyra, Bayley, and Roxanne. There's also story between Becky and Lyra that they can use. Lyra beat Becky for the NXT title over a year ago. So again, if we're just talking about the biggest possible match you can make for the women's IC title, it's Lyra versus Becky. Do I think it's gonna happen? At this point, I'm not so sure. I think it might be Lyra versus Bayley versus Roxanne. But I can't help but feel like Bayley versus Roxanne is just going to be on Stand and Deliver, which would mean that Lyra is either left off of the Mania card entirely, which is possible, or they're just waiting for Becky Lynch to return. Now, who wins each of these matchups? If it's a triple threat, I think Bayley and Roxanne are going to cancel each other out, and then Lyra will retain. But if it's Lyra versus Becky, nah, Becky's winning, because Becky Lynch can elevate the shit out of that title. She did it with the NXT title, so she can obviously do it again. So yeah, I'm kind of manifesting Becky versus Lyra, even though it's probably not gonna happen. So there's 2 sets of men's tag team titles, and as far as the world tag team titles go, I don't think they're going to be defended on WrestleMania. I think those titles are probably in the worst shape on the entire main roster. So whether the War Raiders have them, or LWO, or the New Day, I don't think they're going to be defended at WrestleMania. I think best case scenario, New Day takes the titles off of them and walks into their luchador mask with Chad Gable holding the tag titles. Moving on to the WWE tag team titles, they are clearly building to a giant ladder match. DIY, Motor City Machine Guns, Street Profits, Pretty Deadly, and Los Garza. WWE probably wants at least one big ladder match at WrestleMania, so I think this is going to be it. As far as who wins, I'm hoping Street Profits. Out of all of the tag teams in this division, they're the only ones that are getting these really cool vignettes made. So yeah, I'm not really into this match from a story standpoint, but from an in-ring standpoint, holy crap, this is going to be awesome. The Intercontinental title. There have been reports saying that Braun Breaker is going to defend it in a multi-men match, and that's where I think we're heading because there are a lot of people that have been circling the men's IC title. Namely, Braun Breaker, AJ Styles, Finn Balor, Sheamus, Dom Mysterio, and Logan Paul. I think this is going to be the match. A lot of people, myself included, just wanted Logan Paul versus AJ Styles one-on-one, but honestly, I don't think that's going to happen. AJ Styles has already had a few interactions with Braun Breaker, and Braun Breaker has had some interactions with Finn Balor, and Finn Balor is clearly feuding with Dom Mysterio in a weird way. The two of them are eventually going to turn on each other, and then you have Sheamus waiting in the wings who just wants to get his hands on that damn title. I think what's going to happen is Adam Pearce is going to take all 6 of these guys, throw them in a ring together. It's not going to be a ladder match. It's probably just going to be like a table Extreme Rules thing. And I think that's going to be your men's IC title match. As far as who wins, it's probably going to be Braun. I don't think this is the match where Sheamus finally gets the win. Now, if you ask me what I would prefer to do Braun versus Sheamus and Finn, and then AJ versus Logan in a separate match. But again, there are so many people on the roster that all need to be showcased in some way at WrestleMania. So because of that, I think for the men's IC title match, WWE is just going to kind of throw a bunch of guys in it. The last match I'm predicting is for the women's tag team titles. Liv and Raquel won them from Bianca and Naomi, and there is no way that they are not going to be on the WrestleMania card because Liv Morgan is a megastar. Honestly, one of the best wrestlers in the company right now. There is no way that they are not going to be at WrestleMania. So it just comes down to who are they going to face, and to me, there are 2 options. One option is they do kind of a fatal 4-way thing like they did at Crown Jewel. So Liv and Raquel versus Nia and Candice versus Lash and Jakara versus any 2 members of Damage Control, assuming Asuka or Kairi return before WrestleMania. That's certainly one option, but I think it's more exciting if it's just a true tag match, 2-on-2. So because of that, I think the biggest possible match you could do is Liv and Raquel versus Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. Why? Ever since returning to WWE, Alexa Bliss has 2 stories going. One of them is that weird thing with the Wyatt Six where at some point she's going to get involved with them. But the other story is the fact that Liv Morgan eliminated her from both the Rumble and the Chamber. So I think WWE is going to use that to start this feud. Would I have preferred it to just be Liv versus Alexa one-on-one? Yeah, but I'm not mad at this matchup because I like the fact that the women's tag team titles will probably be defended at WrestleMania, as they should be. Plus, you kind of need the Wyatt Six involved in WrestleMania somehow. So even if it's just Nikki Cross tagging with Alexa Bliss, sure, we'll take it. As far as who wins, I actually think Liv and Raquel retain because I don't see why the Wyatt Six would need any titles. Them as a faction holding titles feels kind of weird. Plus, Liv and Raquel just won them, and I think they're going to have a really long reign. So yeah, Liv and Raquel for the win. And just like that, we're done. Now, I predicted 17 matchups, if I'm not mistaken. At the very least, one of them needs to go, but realistically, 3 of them have to go, because WWE is not going to put more than 7 matches on per night. So whether they have to take participants from 2 matches and put them together into one, or throw some matches on the SmackDown before WrestleMania or the Raw after WrestleMania. So here's my question to you. Out of those 17 matches I predicted, which 3 of them do you think won't make it onto the card? Whatever you think, comment below, let me know, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.